What's up, guys, and welcome back to Loving Your Neighbor, where we are all about applying the 9 C's. It does us zero good to learn all of this knowledge and never actually apply it, never actually carry out the great commission that King Jesus has told us to carry out, which is to take the good news to all the nations. That is what we are called to do, to love the world the way that Jesus has loved us, right? To go to them with grace and compassion and truth, right? That is the key, and truth. We're pretty good at grace and compassion at times, but we're not very good at truth, right? We want to skirt around the truth rather than give them truth. And then some other people, they're really good at truth, but they don't have any compassion. They don't have any love for people. They're just truth people, right? So those people need to be very cautious and make sure they're coming in love the way that God comes to us, because God doesn't come to us with a hammer, before we're Christians. I've had God come to me with a hammer a couple times, I feel like, after I was a Christian, after I was his child, right? But before that, he was always patient with me. He was always long-suffering with me, and he still is. He still is, because I still need him to be, because I am a project in the working. But this is all about helping us understand how to respond to the world. So we look at articles, we look at videos, we look at all sorts of stuff in terms of responding to the world, so that we learn how to communicate to them in love and truth. And today we're going to look at Mr. Elba's conversation with Oprah Winfrey. You can go watch the video. It's pretty good. But he says it's very obvious that the Earth unleashed the coronavirus on us for beating up the planet. So that's his assumption. Okay, so if I was talking to Mr. Elba and I was having an exchange and he said that, I would go, okay, I kind of feel like I know where he's at. He's probably, secular humanist, Darwinian evolution by natural selection, just by the title, if he said that, okay? And then he goes on to say the Earth has unleashed the China-originated virus on humanity because of the way that we have treated the environment, and it's been poorly. So he says that, which kind of just continues to make me feel this is where he's coming from. But he goes on and he starts to say some things that are very interesting, some things that I would agree with, right? That we're both observing but arriving at different conclusions. And the reason we're arriving at different conclusions is because we have a different starting point. That is very important for you to understand, okay? So let's look at some of the stuff in the middle that we're agreeing upon, and then we'll question one another's starting point, and then we'll see how, with the evidence that we're observing, we arrive at different conclusions. So one of the things that he says is, one of the upsides of this whole drama is that we are forced to think together as a race. I would say absolutely yes. I agree with him there, right? He's speaking as the human race as a collective race, not an individualistic race. Now, I know we're from the Western world where everything's about individualism, but that is not how God created us. He created us collectively, right? We are Adam, humanity, right? If you go back over here to chapter 4, I have it pulled up here, and when God comes to Cain after he's murdered his brother Abel, he says, "Where's your brother Abel?" And Cain goes, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" Ironically, the answer is absolutely you're your brother's keeper, right? When God said everything was very good at the end of creation, right? When he says, and everything is very good. Anyways, he says it, okay? I don't know where it is right now. He says it. It's at the end of 2 somewhere. But he says, and everything was very good. What he was saying was that God and man are good, right? God and man are good. Man to man is good. Man to creation is good. It's all good. Okay, that's important to understand. So I agree with Mr. Elba, and I would tell him that. Yes, it is going to make us think differently as a human race. And then he goes on to say our world has been taking a kicking. Okay, by who? By us? Because he says we have damaged our world, and it's no surprise. That's so interesting. It's no surprise. Now I'm going to come back to this, that our world is reacting to the human race. Okay, that's huge. That is like treasure when somebody throws that up to you, okay? You need to hold on to that. And it's no surprise that a virus has been created that is going to slow us down. What? And ultimately make us think differently about our world and ourselves. This whole sentence is treasure. Okay? Because here's the deal. I would say this. I would say, can I say something? It's as if God has been reaching out to us because we have sinned. And it's no surprise. It's no surprise that God is reacting this way to the human race because He is just and righteous and holy. And He loves us, and He has nothing to prove in and of Himself. And it's no surprise that these things come upon us like a virus that is trying to slow us down and ultimately make us think differently about our world and ourselves. Yes, Mr. Elba, I completely agree with your observation. I just insert God rather than Mother Earth. Mother Earth. I insert God rather than Mother Earth. And I believe my starting point makes a lot more sense than your starting point, and I'll show you why. Here's where he gets in a lot of trouble. For me, that's a standout and very obvious. That this is almost like the world's crying out, hey, you're kicking me, and what you're doing is not good. Whoa, 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 whoa. Not good? Hold on to that. So I'll get rid of you, as any organism would do. The world is trying to get rid of an infection, and maybe this is it for the world. An infection? Okay, time out. If we're talking about infections, why are we talking about what you're doing is not good? So if anybody ever uses that word good, guys, you immediately need to ask them to define what they mean by good. Because I can promise you most of the time they don't mean what you think they mean. Okay? So that's very important. Are we talking about supreme morality, perfect morality, beauty, goodness, infinite, perfect, holy goodness? Like, is that what we're talking about? Because if we are, and we ought to be, not just I'm a little bit better than my neighbor, right? Which is what most people mean by good. I don't understand why he's saying we should be good when we're infections. If we're just an infection on this earth, there's no reason for us to be doing anything differently, especially anything good, and there's absolutely no reason for us to think differently about ourselves and our world and who we are together as the human race. We're an infection. We're doing what infections do, right? Take over the host, destroy the host. I don't understand why anyone is disappointed in what we're doing if that's what we are. And that's why I said he's going to get himself in trouble. Because if your starting point is that we are an infection, then nothing else he said in this article makes any sense. It doesn't. Right? It just doesn't. Okay? And it's interesting also that he says that we have damaged our world. I want you to catch this. Because our damage should not surprise, so it should not surprise us. Well, why shouldn't it surprise us? Because we've done wrong. That's what he's saying. We've been doing wrong. So he says that the virus was created to judge us and to get us to think differently about our world and ourselves. Noah and the ark, Sodom and Gomorrah, the land of Canaan and Israelites' conquest. Isn't it interesting that if I bring any of those things up, the same people that would applaud what he's saying right here would absolutely reject that and tell me that my God is a cruel and mean and terrible God. They could never see the justice in that. They can never see the love in that, the mercy in that. But when he talks about Mother Earth doing it, sure, it's just. We see the justice here, right? Of course this is just. Yeah, but your God, no, he's not just. Isn't that so interesting how that works? What is it in the human heart that is willing to accept this as just and good and has Mother Earth on some pedestal that we need to submit to, but when we put God up there, we reject it? What is that in the human heart? And I want to tell you what that is. What that is that in this worldview that Elba has created here, although it doesn't flow and doesn't have a cohesion to it, because infections shouldn't do what's good and they shouldn't think differently about their world and themselves, in this worldview, he has set up something that he does not have to be accountable to it, nor does he have to be responsible to it. Yes, he's going to have to deal with the consequences such as the virus, but in the long run, in eternity, there is no eternal justice that he's accountable to, that he's responsible to. And that's why we like spiritualism. That's why we like Mother Earth. That's why we like those things, because we are still God at the end of the day. we get to still judge for ourselves what is right and wrong, what is good and evil. Whereas if God is God, then we are accountable to Him, and we hate that. We hate that. Okay? So I want to give you a better understanding of this, Mr. Elba. I would say we're not an infection. That's a bad starting point. We're created in the image of God. We are His royal representatives, put in a good earth to subdue it and to expand it and to dwell with God forever. That is what He made us to do. But we sinned. We fell. We fell from the glory that we were supposed to obtain with God. And therefore now the world is broken. The world is broken. And when we do certain things, when we live certain ways, it's as if it's baked into the cake. It's not necessarily God is judging us. It's as if I went and jumped off a building and expected to float. That's not the way the world is. Gravity would pull me down and I would die. So God has created the world a certain way, and if you operate inside of that world the way that it's created, it usually leads to some form of blessing. But if you operate inside of it differently than the way it was created, it's going to lead to a form of judgment. That's one way God judges, and just the practicality of the way things actually are. And then sometimes He does judge us in a very specific way, but not because He has anything to prove like Mother Earth or that He has to defend Himself like Mother Earth, but because He loves His creation, because He is a father to His creation. And fathers that love their sons and daughters, they discipline them. You know why? Because they are wanting to, with Oprah's response, show us something about ourselves as individuals and also as the world of people. Right? Oprah even sees this. She says this. I absolutely agree. And what He's wanting to show us is that we have sinned against a holy, righteous, and good God. And that our Father is calling out to us. And He is telling us that we have given ourselves over to the kingdom of the deceiver, of the liar. And He has gotten us to make life about things that it's not. About money, about pride, even about family. Right? He's gotten us to throw off the institutions of our God that He has given us so that we may have a relationship with Him, such as marriage, sex, family, the church, right? We've started to redefine these things and use them as we want to. And the reason God put them in the earth to begin with is so that we could understand Him. I'm a father, okay? I'm a new father. I have a 10-month-old, and I try to communicate to my 10-month-old. My 10-month-old can't understand me, but I'll take like objects and I'll be like, yeah, it's like this or it's like that. And as he grows older, I'm going to have to communicate to him in ways other than language. Okay, other than language, because language is not going to be sufficient because he's going to be learning language. Why do we think that God, an infinite, holy God that is so far above us, that His ways are not our ways, His thoughts are not our thoughts, can simply communicate to us through only language? It's absurd. God communicates to us through putting institutions in the world. Sex tells us something about God and our relationship with Him. Marriage does. Fatherhood does. Motherhood does. We have tore down marriage. We have made it our own way. We have tore down fatherhood. We abandon our responsibilities as father. We take sex and we do what we want with it. It's no longer meant for marriage, but now we have it whenever we want to with as many people as we want to, and it's purely for pleasure. I mean, I could go on and on with how we've absolutely thrown off God's kingship over all these things, and then we wonder why we don't experience God. You're not going to experience God when you take His stuff and you redefine it and use it the way you want to use it. Okay, you're not. So God is trying to wake us up. He's trying to get us to see the lie and the deception that we are living in is the enemy of man's souls who have come to steal, kill, and destroy you, has caused you to live for all the things that you weren't made to live for. You were made for God, to glorify Him and enjoy Him forever. So I would agree with these two. This virus is here to wake us up, to show us something about ourselves, to get us to think differently about our world and ourselves as a collective human race.